Hey folks, Dave Temple here. As you know, my podcast is all about talking to the best thriller writers in the world. Now, while I don't put myself in that category of the best, I've certainly got my hat now in the ring. And after nearly 3 years of hosting this podcast, I think it's time to toot my own horn, if you will. So with that, I'm offering my thriller, The Poser, for sale all this month. It stars Detective Pat Norelli, a rookie cop working the overnight beat in Hollywood when one of the town's biggest stars is found dead in her Hollywood Hills home only hours after winning an Oscar. Beloved by her fans, Pat thinks someone wants this star dead and sees this as a way to forge her own path and get the promotion she craves. I'm proud of the response I've gotten from fans, and I'm confident you're going to like The Poser. So for the rest of this month, you can get the ebook for only $5 or the paperback for $14. Since I do this weekly podcast as a free service, perhaps you'd consider this as a way to help out a fellow thriller writer. There are two ways to reach the link. First, you can go to davidtemplebooks.com, scroll down to see The Poser, click, and you're on your way. Or head over to Amazon. You can find it there. Again, davidtemplebooks.com or Amazon. Thanks in advance for your support. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to The Thriller Zone. I'm your host, David Temple, and we are celebrating November as Women Thriller Writers Month. I was looking for a shorter title, but it kind of worked. And on today's show, DeLuca, a.k.a. Marjorie DeLuca, has written a book called The Night Side, and we're going to be talking about that. She hails from over the pond. Now she's living north of us in Canada, and she is a delight. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Marjorie DeLuca right here on The Thriller Zone. Hi, Marjorie.
Hey, David. I'm using a new microphone, so I'm hoping it's working.
What kind is it?
It's a solo cast.
Oh, she's on a fancy, sexy microphone.
Well, I thought I might be doing a few of these, so I invested.
You know what? Can I just say this for the record for the people who listen to this show? Now, we're in the green room with Marjorie DeLuca, by the way, but this is that little preamble that we get going. But
yeah,
I wish more people would do what you did, which is I bet you didn't spend $200.
Did I spent more than $200?
I bet you didn't spend $500.
No.
Okay. The point being, the microphone is probably the number one most important thing because it's the hardest thing to doctor after the fact.
Yeah.
Lighting would be number two. If I can't see you, then why do we mess with television, so to speak?
Well, and I bought a light too, a ring light.
A ring light. I see that.
Oh,
You're
yes.
so fancy.
Fancy.
All right. Well, first of all, welcome to the Thriller Zone. Now, should I call you Marjorie or M.M. DeLuca?
Well, my name is Marjorie, but I write as M.M. DeLuca.
All right. So I'm going to call you Marjorie because I feel like we're already friends. We've shared.
Yeah, I feel like
Don't
that
you?
too.
Don't you feel that? Don't you feel like we've known each other forever?
We've swapped pictures.
And Marjorie, can I just say, last night I was doing a little extra researching on your Instagram.
Yeah.
And look, I found something that clicked, and I'm gonna flip that picture up in the screen. Does this ring any bells?
Yes. That is a fabulous place.
For those who are not watching but are listening on the podcast, I held up a T-shirt called The Temple Bar out of Dublin, Ireland.
Oh, I love that. We just came back from there. It's wonderful.
Well, the holiday picture that I'm going to flash up on the screen is worth the price of admission. But my sister went to Dublin. She and her partner went to Dublin, and she got me this T-shirt because of, I don't know, the last name. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. We're going to jump into, you don't have to worry about that thing. That looks good, okay, girlfriend. Yeah. The Night Side is one of those thrillers that you think it's going down this path. Oh, I know what this is. And then it goes over here and you're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. But okay, now I know what it is. And then it does this. So it's a lot
twisty. I like to write twisty stories.
I think my new nickname for you is M.M. Twisty DeLuca.
Then I'll have to be MMT.
MMT, along with DT on the TZ.
Yeah.
All right. I am just full of foolishness today. Now, I know that you're a writer of contemporary and historical suspense. And given I haven't featured much of a historical aspect, that was one of the reasons I was so excited to have you on the show, because of that fact. And the fact that we share a mutual friend in Mark Gottlieb at Trident Media Group.
Great guy. Just a really lovely guy.
Lovely
I'm so happy that I signed with him. He's been so supportive, and he's such a gentle guy.
Yeah.
Always willing to chat. Even when you get sort of a bit neurotic, he just soothes you and calms you, and it's great.
He was on the show recently, and that is lovely is a great word. He is such a lovely guy. He's charming, so easygoing. You have a feeling if somebody ran down the hall saying, Mark, the building's on fire, he'd go, okay, now let's just go down this hall. You know, he would just like, okay, well, let's not panic. Just move on.
Yes. And we writers tend to get a bit kind of nervous about our books when they go out into the world, but he is very calming influence and always has your back, which is great.
And, you know, his dad has done pretty good in the business, I think.
I would say.
By the way, his father basically established Trident Media Group in New York.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. All right. Now, I do have a couple of questions that I want to talk about before we really dig into the night side, which we're going to get there. But first of all, let's start with where you are now, because when you got your start, our neighbor to the north and formerly across the pond, why did you choose Canada, say, over the States?
Well, actually, I followed my sister here. I came over quite a long time ago to be a bridesmaid at her wedding, and I kind of fell in love with the place. There's so much space here, and I thought, I'll get a job, I'll work here for a short time, and then I'll go back. But it never happened. I stayed here.
It's Winnipeg, right?
Winnipeg, yeah. Everybody says, Winnipeg? What's Winnipeg?
I'm a big fan of Canada. I have friends in both Toronto and across the way in Vancouver. And I love Canadians. They're just so nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. And now there is one interesting thing for my fans who have not been to Canada. They are the most polite people. Now, English are super polite, but Canadians are polite. They may be furious at you, but you wouldn't know it. They're too polite.
Yes, I was reading that we are supposed to be very polite. I'm not sure that's a bit of a generalization, but we do tend to be a bit more laid back.
Yeah.
I think we're pretty chill about things, eh?
Hey. You have lost a bit of your accent, though. It's not full blown. It's softened.
Full blown English? No.
Yeah.
I have kind of a mixed accent.
You saw on Twitter, I posted that video that you sent me.
Yes, thank you for doing that. I love that video.
It's so charming. Now, what was life like growing up in? It was Northeast England, right? Which is where that video came from. Yeah.
Yeah, Durham City. You know what? I think that's what gave me the start as a writer. We lived in a small lane, a country lane just outside of Durham City, and it was called Creamery Cottages. I know, it was crazy. And it was very secluded from everybody. And so I spent quite a lot of time alone and just wandering up and down this little country lane. And there were a lot of characters in the different houses there. There were sort of a few different places I'd kind of wander around, and my imagination kind of grew there, I would say. My imagination was really stoked by that place. And so naturally after that, I used to go on the bus to the library and I read everything. I was the kind of kid that I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I kept going into my mother's wardrobe to see if I could get to Narnia. And I read Alice Through the Looking Glass, and I would look at the mirror on the fireplace and I would will it to dissolve so that I could step through. So I think that's where it all began.
And that's where some of that influence takes place in the night side.
Yes, actually, there are some places in the night side that are kind of modeled on some places in creamery cottages, even though it's set in Montana.
Well, I would like to do this. I'd like to ask first of all, well, we'll get to the elevator pitch of the book in just a second, but I want to know what do you feel sets you apart from other writers in this genre?
Well, it's interesting because I never really thought of my books as thrillers, I guess, but I guess thriller is a very wide sort of genre.
Mm-hmm.
My books are more suspenseful. They deal with a lot of family dynamics, human dynamics. And I think I pay a lot of attention to, I love language and the use of language. And I really get into character. And I really get into a setting because I feel that if you don't develop the world of the story, the reader can't step in. Maybe I have a bit more detail in my books. They're not as plot driven, I think, as some thrillers.
It may not be as plot driven, but it is so intricately woven with suspense and wonder because it has that literary feel to it. So the description of the description of the scenes feels more literary.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Some people might say, oh, that's a bit slow moving, but I can't help it. I had a great writing teacher who always said, get the scissors out and snip, snip. And I really had to do that because I was using way too much description. So I have to be conscious of that. I've gotten better with time.
Okay. Now, with that in mind, I would love to hear, and I use the phrase elevator pitch because I was working in Hollywood for so long. So everyone was they're always talking about, cut to the chase as fast as you can. So an elevator pitch is basically just the thumbnail sketch of the book. And in this case, of course, we're talking about the night side. I do that because A, you know it more intimately than I do. And B, I don't want to give anything away, Marjorie. Okay.
Can I use my cheat sheet?
Please do. I insist.
Okay, so the night side is about Ruby, a successful archaeologist living in England who ran away at 18 to escape her mother, a self-proclaimed medium and psychic scammer, only to be drawn back 20 years later to her childhood home in rural Montana to uncover the shocking truth about a mother she thought she knew.
Insert dramatic music here.
Yeah.
That is very well done. Now, if you were going to call up a girlfriend and say, and I'm doing this for funsies, this is off the script, I'm just having fun.
Yeah.
Your girlfriend will call her Sally. Hey, Marjorie, I'm coming over for some tea or whatever. Love to see you. And you go, yeah, come on over. And she goes, oh, what's that? Your latest book. Well, how would you go? Well, Sally, you know what this book is about? Blank. I'm just love to hear if you're saying it too as though it's just a friend of yours.
It's about a girl who tries to escape from her manipulative, evil, psychic scammer of a mother, a very twisted one at that.
There you go. The first sentence you had, and then that right there. Now, see that right? That's just great storytelling.
A bit there.
No. There's no floundering. It's the thriller zone. We just hang out and shoot the breeze. Twisted mother-daughter relationship. Boom. Oh, and by the way, there's paranormal and evil nuances therein. But anyway.
Yes.
Now, I want to take 2 minutes. I want to dive something because I see it on the wall behind you. I want to dive a little bit into your catalog. If one were to look, thanks to your website, etc., looking back to your beginning with Chasing a Thrill and Doll's Eyes and other short stories, then your foray into sci-fi, a nuanced story. How do you explain that journey? Because that is a colorful journey of yours.
I know. You know what? The thing is, I get easily bored by sticking with the same genre all the time. So when I started off, I actually started off with young adult sci-fi. I was still teaching at the time. And I'd read The Hunger Games with the kids, and they just loved it. It was just sort of a welcome reprieve from all the usual high school, texts. And I thought, wow, that was such a fantastic book. I think I can write something like this. And I have a great premise for it. What if? Because what if is always at the center of a sci-fi book.
Sure.
What if a company could manufacture beings that only aged till the age of 19 and stayed that way forever? And what if they were to siphon off the blood or the plasma or whatever and sell it to all those rich old people on the outside, who wanted to stay young forever? And it's basically looking at the conflict between, if we found something that could allow us to live forever, and stop the aging process, it would basically be a conflict between big business, big government, and big crime. And that's how that book was born.
Oh, now that's juicy. Big business, big medicine, and big crime. Yeah. Here's the first thing that popped into my mind, Marjorie, is that I wasn't the smartest, the sharpest knife in the drawer, meaning I wasn't always making good choices. So I don't know that I'd pick 19. I'd probably pick somewhere between 28 and 32.
Yeah, I'm not sure why I picked 19. It was sort of arbitrary. And I think it was to appeal to the age of the kids that I was writing for.
Sure, sure.
While I was kind of researching for that, I discovered that a famous poisoner, one of England's first serial poisoners, who was actually tried and hanged in Durham in 1873, just lived around the corner from my grandmother. And obviously 100 years before.
Sure.
And I started researching her, and that became the book, The Savage Instinct.
I love this. I love that cover, but the title too, The Savage Instinct. It's something that grabs you, and you don't even care what the story's about because there's a title that's just a killer title.
Yeah, that was a very dark book. In fact, somehow I kind of gravitate towards dark stories. I'm not sure why, but
well, first of all, that's just good thrillers, and aren't we kind of taking a pitchfork and a shovel to our subconscious sometimes when we create this darker side?
We love it.
Yeah,
we really like that. We like to get into the dark side. Well,
this begs the question: the night side.
Yes.
More dramatic music, please. When do you think that you were hitting a particular stride where you knew you had found your niche? And I want to know if it was about the time that you hooked up with our mutual friend Mark Gottlieb. Did you find that stride, or did he recognize something that said, "Ooh, here is your stride. Let's go this way," and with more specificity?
Well, actually, it was before that, because I didn't have an agent for a long time. I'd had one before, but then I didn't have an agent for a long time. And I entered this thing called PitMad.
Oh, yeah.
Pitch thing on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my books, which became The Secret Sister, was liked by this lovely editor called Leodora Darlington. I signed a contract for 2 books, 2 contemporary suspense novels, The Secret Sister and The Perfect Family Man. I guess Mark must have seen that I was having some success, and he called me up and I said, "Is this a joke?" And I thought, this has got to be a scam. Somebody asking if I'm looking for representation. So I messaged him back and said, "Is this really you? Are you?" And he said, "Yes, it's me."
Marjorie, that's a dream come true, and only from one of the biggest agents in publishing. Folks, this is what I'm talking about. First of all, the book is The Night Side. The story is fantastic. You're going to be pulled in and sucked down this dark rabbit hole. But really, kind of the thing that I want to make sure I get here is that, just like Marjorie, sometimes we don't know what's going to hit, what's not, this might hit, this might miss, but somebody somewhere is going to see some little grain of talent and they're going to go, "Who is she and what does she have? I want that." Right?
I hope so.
Well, you did so.
Yeah, that's right. And still got a ways to go. I guess what you said on the tweet, I'm not exactly a household name yet, but I just love getting, still get messages from people who have read the books and saying they love them.
And did you notice I put the emphasis on she may not be a household name yet.
Yes, thank you. It was great.
Mm-hmm. You have a fan, Marjorie.
Thank you. A
Now,
lovely fan.
what's that?
A lovely fan.
Oh, you're going to make me blush. Now, I also want to say one thing. I credited you and I complimented you at the top of the show, either in the green room or right when we started, about the fact that you went out of your way to get a nice microphone, which we're in the world of sound. Podcasting is about sound. So you knew enough to go, I need to get a good microphone. So I say thank you to that. Cheers to you. Folks, listen to that. Drop a few $100, get a good microphone. It makes all the difference in the world. But here's number two. You may be one of the very few guests on my show that I can think of. Now, there may be more, but not many, that have actually taken the time to link back to my website. I was on your website last night and I saw, hey, coming up on this show, here's the Thriller Zone with my new friend, David Temple. Here's the link. So thank you for that.
I'm trying to be very social media savvy.
Well, you have to be. It's part of the deal. Everybody will tell you what's your platform, and some of that stuff will annoy you as a writer, but it's so essential. You know, if they don't know, I'm on the phone yesterday with an old friend of mine. We're doing a little Zoom call, and we're chatting, and he's known me for 30 years, and he says to me, hey, David, when are you going to get your show on podcast channels? All I ever get to do is watch it on YouTube. I'm like, what? I'm like, it's on every single podcast channel in the free world. He's like, really? And he checked on it. My point to that is, you got to be everywhere, Marjorie, right? If you're not out there banging on the door yourself, Mark's not going to do it. Mark doesn't take care of you and do your press and your whatever else. He says, hey, we're going to give you a deal. Then you go do some of the work, right?
Yeah, you're right. And I think most aspiring writers just don't realize. They think, okay, you've got the agent. Wow, that's it. But it isn't, because then the agent has to send your work out and maybe someone will pick it up and maybe someone won't. Then, okay, you get a publisher and you think, that's it. No, it isn't. It's going to be reviewed. You know, readers are going to give their opinions about it. And you have to try and help sell it, because it isn't going to sell itself.
You said it more beautifully. I took way too many words to say what you just said, which is so much of the work is in your lap. As we start to wrap, we're not totally done yet, but I want to say that you have struck me as someone, because we have communicated via email quite a bit before you were coming on. And I said, you know what? I bet you Marjorie is going to be someone who will get a charge out of my silly little game called Rapid Fire Questions. Have you ever heard me do this? Number one, paper and pen or keyboard and screen?
Oh, keyboard and screen.
Number two, and I'm just being silly, and I actually drilled down to find out what a crumpet was. I said, tea and crumpets or ale and a food truck?
Oh, definitely tea and crumpets, but you have to have cheese with it.
Really? And I come to find out that a crumpet is griddle bread. It's what I would refer to as like an English muffin, but a little bit more.
No, it's kind of a round, doughy thing with holes in it. And you toast it and you put butter on it, and the butter seeps through the holes.
So is it like a waffle?
Thicker.
Okay. All right. Well, and the reason I picked that, of course, England, and ale and food truck is because I know that the ale festivals and the food trucks are so big in Winnipeg. So I wanted to make it hard for you.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yes, they are.
All right. Number three, you've just won the lottery. Congratulations.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Yeah. Something my wife and I are always talking about.
Yeah, my husband is always dreaming of that.
So what is the second thing that you're going to do with your huge cash winnings? Because we know the smart people in the audience are probably going to visit their investors first thing the next morning. But what's the second thing you're going to do after winning? And we'll just call it 100 million. What's the second thing you'll do?
Probably have a long discussion about how we're going to split it up with our kids.
Now, that's a selfless mother. Come on. But I mean, for you, spoil yourself. Let's have some fun. Just the very first thing that pops into your head.
I'd probably buy a house in England, probably in Durham.
Okay. Yeah. Number four and last, you and your hubby can get away for 2 long weeks to some warm and toasty island. We're going to pick that because I know I've, again, spending way too much time on your Instagram account. I know that you like that. You're going to enjoy 3 things. 1, 2, 3, 3 things, all of which you'll think ahead and take with you. All right. Now name the one book you're going to take with you the one playlist you're going to listen to. It can be an iPod. It can be however you want to listen to it. Let's just pretend. Okay. And number 3, the one beverage that will most likely flow for the entire 2 weeks. So book, playlist, beverage.
I would probably take something by Sarah Waters. Who's one of my favorite writers, either Affinity or The Little Stranger, which is one of the spookiest books I've read. One of my favorite guitar players is Joe Bonamassa. I'm just crazy about him. One beverage? You mean alcoholic?
If you enjoy that sort of thing, of course.
Caesars.
What?
Caesars. You don't have Caesars in the States.
What's a Caesar?
It's a Bloody Mary, but instead of tomato juice, it's clamato juice.
All right. So let me take a second and break this down. So it's not tomato juice, but it's kind of tomato juice, but with clam juice in it?
Yeah, it's called clamato juice.
Clamato.
Yeah.
And vodka, I'm assuming.
Yes, and Tabasco
celery
sauce.
Yeah.
Worcester sauce, thick of celery.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Do you have a sardine sandwich with that? Okay, enough about that. All right. As we begin to wrap, and you know this, you've heard my show before, I like to ask all my guests one last question, and it's that one piece of insights, and that being, what is your best piece of writing advice? With a two handful of books to your credit now, and many more en route. What do you think? What would you say? Okay, I'm sitting down with a class or a friend who really wants to write. What's that one piece of advice?
Yeah, and this is something I used to do with my creative writing classes. I would say to them, if you want to be a writer, first of all, you've got to write. You can have lots of ideas, but you've got to sit down and write. But you also have to develop your writer's eyes and ears and senses. So that can get you into trouble. And I used to actually send them out and say, watch people, watch how they interact, listen to how they speak, really look at everything, but don't just look at the surface, look beyond it. But don't get yourself into trouble, because often I'll catch myself watching people interacting in a supermarket. And once or twice people said, do you want a picture? What are you looking at? And I'm like, oh, sorry. I'm a writer. I'm just kind of taking notes. And I think that's what makes writers kind of stand out.
Once again, folks, the book is The Night Side. You can learn more at the website, MarjorieDeLuca.com. Of course, follow her as I do on both Twitter, X, and Instagram. And boy, once again, this was as equally, if not more delightful than I had anticipated.
Yeah, that was great. It's a real, can I say it's a real thrill to be on the Thrillers?
Oh, I see what you did there. Yeah.
Thank you so much, David. Great meeting you.
Your front row